Bonjour, 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 and welcome back to my channel, The Waves of Your Soul. In today's video, I'm gonna be sharing with you all the tarot and oracle decks that surprised me, decks that really took me by surprise, that gave me something I wasn't expecting, all for different reasons. I looked back at all of the decks I have in my collections, and there was definitely a few that stood out that ended up being big surprises that weren't necessarily what I had anticipated them to be, that didn't give me necessarily the results I expected them to give, or the vibe, or that I ended up using differently than I thought. We're gonna be talking about surprises, and this is a response to my wonderful friend over at Semplicemente SE, or Simply SE, an Italian tarot tuber. I adore her. She posts pick a card readings all in Italian, but sometimes she graces us with English videos, and she actually created this tag for all of us English speakers, and so I'm gonna leave her video down below so you can check it out. Please tell her I say hi! So the hashtag she created is #surprisingdecks, if you wanna use that. Be ready, because I have a lot to share today. As per usual, we're used to me being unable to make short videos. And if it's your first time here, hi, my name is Marine, I'm a French tarot reader and a lover of everything tarot, oracle and self-empowerment related. On my channel I love posting videos about decks. I love decks, oracle decks, tarot decks, I make no distinction, I love them all. They're a huge passion of mine. And I also love posting pick a card readings, all dedicated to helping you to help yourself. So if you'd like to see any of those things on your timeline, make sure to subscribe. You can hit the bell if you want to be notified. In the description box, as per usual, you're gonna find all the names of the decks. If I find links to where to purchase, I'll put them down there. You'll also find links to my other social media links, as well as other videos you might want to check out. And I think I've done my good YouTuber intro. I've said everything I needed to. So without further ado, let's get into all the decks that took me by surprise. So when I watched my friend's video, I knew straight away that I wanted to do a VR, and I had originally planned to film something else today, but I changed my mind. We'll do that next time. I was just too excited to talk about surprising decks, because it made me sit in front of my tarot shelves, and it made me think what decks either gave me something else than my expectations were, maybe they exceeded my expectations, or maybe they turned out to be different than what I had originally planned. And I've got a bit of a mix: indie, mass market, tarot, or an oracle. There's gonna be no particular order, so just strap in. The first one that was actually a pleasant surprise is a deck I've had for a year and a half now, or maybe it's been 2 years. When did this come out? I don't know. The Nightmare Before Christmas tarot deck. I think it was 2020, right? I bought this as soon as it came out, and I really only bought this because I love the Nightmare Before Christmas movie. It's definitely like one of my feel-good movies for me. It's the ultimate Halloween / Christmas. I think it can take you all the way from Halloween to Christmas. And for me, it's a movie I've loved since I've been younger. So I bought this because it's from a fandom that I enjoy. But this is actually from Insight Edition, and even at the time when this came out, there was already a few Insight Edition decks that had come out that were, I'm not gonna lie, very disappointing, in the sense that the pips were very pipish, but sometimes with no thought too much behind them, and they felt a little rushed, those decks. All those Inside Editions, especially early on when they were releasing them, they felt a little rush, and they felt a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, like money grabbing, like cash cows, I think you say in English. So I bought this with no expectations at all. I just thought, okay, hopefully they don't ruin Nightmare Before Christmas, but if it sucks, I can always like journal with it and use it like differently. Maybe I'll cut it, maybe make it an oracle or something. Strangely, this actually exceeded my expectations, mostly because I had no expectations. I fully expected this to suck, and I can confirm now after 2 years of having it that it doesn't suck at all. I think this is one of the better decks I've seen Inside Editions do, in the sense that All the majors are really well thought out, and the minors, even though a lot of them are pepish, they give something enough that you can still get the meanings out of them. For 4 of cups or 4 of potions, we don't just see 4 cups put there like copy and pasted. We see 3 of them, and one that's like almost like the hand in the RWS. This time it's replaced by the smoke, so you're being offered an extra one if you're not content with this one, which is very similar to the RWS original meaning. And then a lot of the minors are actually not necessarily pepish. A lot of them are scenic. So this was a very pleasant surprise, and honestly I've not had anything bad to say ever since I've gotten this. I've been really enjoying it. The sides I've actually edged in black because I've used this quite a lot. It was starting to get dirty. The quality is nice, you can refill shuffle it. The guidebook is really well written. I was fully expecting this to be so sucky. And actually, it brings me a lot of joy. Look at this sun card. I think they made some clever choices. The renaming of the suit, which is not normally my favorite thing. Here it makes sense. Presents for pentacles. It's a material thing. I can hold on to it. I can understand it. Potions for cups. You drink potions. You drink from cups. So again, it makes sense. Candles for wands. For me, wands associate with the fire element, so candles for wands, again, it makes sense. And I think for the swords, we have needles, which if you've seen the movie, again, it makes a lot of sense. Honestly, this was a pleasant surprise because it was much better than I thought, because I had low expectations from the publisher. From the other decks I had seen them do, I had seen so many people complain that they had ruined their fandom, but with me, for my particular fandom, I can say that I'm very happy with this. And I didn't show you the guidebook, but it's full color. You get upright and reverse meanings for all of the cards. And then, like I was saying, the guidebook is really solid. So I really recommend this if you enjoy this particular fandom, this particular movie, not just for Halloween, for all year long. It's a good read. The next deck that surprised me is actually a deck that Sephora, who created this hashtag, gifted me. We did a deck swap a few months ago, last year I think it was, and I sent her some French decks and she sent me a couple of Italian decks, and she sent me this one from Lo Scarabeo, which is Tarocchi del Fantasmi, and I believe in English it's Ghost Tarot. So it's a Lo Scarabeo deck. I didn't even know this deck existed, so when I received this from Sephora I was super happy to explore it. It's another one that definitely took me by surprise, mostly because I had no expectations, because I didn't even know this deck existed. I think it's one of the older Lo Scarabeo decks. I mean, the digital artwork, it looks a little bit like that 2000 kind of digital artwork, and I say that as a compliment because I live for those older fantasy style artwork. There's something inside me that lives for that dolphin poster 2000 kind of digital artwork life. But also, I was super pleasantly surprised because at first when I flicked through the deck, I wasn't sure what to expect. And because this is called a Ghost Tarot, as you can see in most of the cards, you see ghostly figures that are there. And after using the deck, I realized that this, obviously, you could use this for lots of different ways. Potentially, you want to use this for communicating with loved ones who have passed on. That could be a really good thing, like, or actually, communicating with goats, doing spirit work if you're into that kind of thing, maybe doing some past life readings and things like that. But the way I've mostly been using it and the way it resonates for me, and that's where it was such a huge surprise, was that for me this deck has been amazing for working with my own ghosts of the past, the things that I've been pushing down, the things that are haunting my internal closet, that are ready to burst out at any moment, in my haunted rooms, the ghosts that are ready to, haunt me and do some tricks and poltergeist my life if I'm not paying attention to them, and ghost bust their ass. We all have ghosts in our life closets, we all have ghosts in our inner haunted rooms, ghosts of the past, things that we've decided to ignore, things that we maybe not even know exist. And so for that particular form of shadow work, which is to look at what I've been repressing, what I've been not wanting to look at, or what's potentially blocking me that I'm not aware of, all of those kind of ghostly figures of my psyche, this deck has been amazing, and I really want to offer a pick a card reading on my channel using this deck for this particular theme. I think it's gonna be helpful and hopefully it will be of use to some of you, so watch out for that. But this was a huge surprise because I didn't expect this deck to give me that profound type of reading. I thought it was going to be this cheesy but in the best way possible fantasy artwork, and it turns out to be a really good deck for me for kind of heavy shadow work, I'm not gonna lie. So love this one. I'm so thankful to IC for sending this to me. Took a chance by sending this to me, and honestly it's been such a joy to use. Let's move on to an indie tarot deck that I didn't plan on buying and that ended up in my lap by mistake. This was a complete mistake. This was the Bad Girl Tarot by Katie Skelly, and originally I had ordered from a tarot shop the Bad Girl Oracle, which I have here. Let me get it. Here it is. This is what I wanted. I've been wanting this deck for years. It's been on my wish list for so long, and this is what I had ordered. What I received first from the tarot shop I ordered was the tarot deck. I was surprised because that's not what I ordered. And again, I had not very big expectations because when I first looked at her work, I really enjoyed her artwork, but what I had really vibed with was the Oracle. But because it was already in my hands and it would have cost way too much for me to send this back in order to get the right one, it made no financial sense to try and resend this because I live in the tropical island. This had already gone through Europe in order to get to me, so it was just too complicated to send back, so I just decided to keep it and give it a go. And boy, am I glad that I kept this, because this turned out to be one of my favorite decks from the end of last year, and this is an absolute summer deck for me that I'm so glad I have now. It's brilliant. So the Bad Girl Tarot was a huge surprise because I didn't expect to like vibe with it so much. Obviously, have you seen? I ended up ordering the Oracle, but this time to make sure that I got the right one, I ordered directly from the artist and I did get what I wanted. So I didn't order through another shop this time, I just ordered from the artist directly. This was the biggest surprise for me because I didn't expect to enjoy this deck so much. This was maybe my favorite summer deck for the summer 2022/2023. My summer is like December, January, February. Because I live in the southern hemisphere and I live on a tropical island, so we are different from a lot of you guys watching. Also, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, you get me. So right now I'm in winter, so I've not been using this deck in the last couple of months because it's not the vibe. But this summer I could not put this down. It was such a great surprise. And as the name suggests, the Bad Girl Tarot, it's full of badasses women, badasses hotties who just don't give a fuck and live their best life, and they're fierce and they're just unapologetic and they don't give a shit and they live their life truly and proudly, and I need some of that. I think we all do. Sometimes it's nice to remember that yes, you're the shit, and you know, remember that you can do things. And there are some things that are not gonna please to people, because look, in some of the ones we see cigarettes and things that some people might not appreciate. Even the 10 of Swords, she's just giving you the peace sign like, I'm good, it's all good. So a lot of it is irreverent and cheeky, but I really enjoy that part of it. I think this deck has a great sense of humor. It also has a great sense of fashion, and it just has this very fierce, badass personality. It's giving Lizzo vibes, you know, and I'm here for it. It's giving very Queen of Wands fiery side. I could totally use this in winter, but it's just that I enjoyed this particular experience of reading it when it was hot, and I even took it to the beach. And there's a couple of cards that happen like on by the ocean and stuff that I kind of have this association of it now, of this deck meaning summer, especially this star card. Look, it's so beautiful. The Bad Girl Tarot, a deck that I hadn't planned on owning ever, but that actually ended up being a strong favorite. And sometimes life works like this in mysterious ways. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, if you've ever ordered a deck and you didn't end up getting what you wanted. It happens to me a few times. I don't know if it's because I live so far away and things get lost or what, but sometimes it's actually a good surprise. I feel like, in my view, it's the universe sometimes giving you things or sending you things that are meant for you even though you didn't think they were. Let's move on to a mass market deck that really surprised me, mostly because I never thought I would own this and it ended up being gifted to me. This is the Oracle of Sacred Creators, but I have the French version, so in French it's L'Oracle des Créateurs Sacrés by Chris Anne. This is a mass market deck. Like I said, I've got the French version, but this exists in English. and I'm sure in other languages as well. We all know Chrisanne from the Light Sears Tarot and the Muse Tarot, and I have both of her decks, at least the Light Sears and the Muse. I don't have her animal one because it freaks me out. I don't really do well with anthropomorphized, is that a word? Animals that are put on human bodies. They freak me out. That's just nightmare fuel for me. So I'm not about that latest deck that she put out. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I can't deal. But her first two decks, the Muse Tarot and the Light Sears, are strong favorites in my house. And this is a surprise because, like I said, I didn't plan on owning this deck in my life. I thought when I first saw this deck on channels and stuff, I was like, well, it's okay, you know, it's cute. It's like a watercolor background with a sentence on it. And mostly it's all about sacred creators, so it's all about creativity, empowerment, self-employment, people who are content creators or who have like very creative hobbies or who have their own business or just who want to infuse more creativity in empowerment in their life, which honestly I'm all about. In this case, I was clearly wrong to think it was just sentences on the background because first off, those sentences are really cool. I've been using them as spread prompts, I've been using them as journaling prompts, I've been using them to wrap up a reading, I've been using them as card of the day. There's so much you can do with this deck. Second of all, the guidebook is really, really amazing, and that's where for me the magic juice is in this deck, is the guidebook. I mean, I'm gonna show it with you, but it's in French. But just so you can see it, for each card you get essential messages, which are keywords. Then you get keywords that are tailored to take care of yourself, and they're meant to be almost like reversed keywords. Then you get the message of what the card actually means, like your oracular message, and then you get a bunch of journaling prompts, questions, things you can do, activities, all of that. And you get that for every single card. So this is, for me, like I said, this is where the magic happens. I've actually been enjoying this a lot. This has been a lot more versatile than I thought it would. This has given me a lot of actually creative impulse, and this has been really helpful, especially for every time I want to ask questions about my YouTube channel or other like content creating projects. This has become my go-to decks for those questions, so again, pleasantly surprised. Let's move on to a little mass market tarot you might have seen last year mostly, because this was in my top decks of 2022. This is Le Tarot Arc-en-Ciel. In English, it's called the End of the Rainbow Tarot, Tarot at the End of the Rainbow, something like that. It's by Lo Scarabeo. I'll put the name in the description box. The artwork is by Davide Corsi. And like I said, I've got the French version, but it exists in English, and in the English version, the guidebook actually comes with several languages. So that's why I enjoy Lo Scarabeo decks, because they are, I think, more accessible for a lot of people. They allow a lot of people to read the guidebooks, not just English speakers. So this, as I was saying, was in my top decks of 2022, and I didn't plan at all to love this deck so much when I bought it. Honestly, I bought it because I thought it was going to be a cute fairy deck. That's it. And after using it and looking at it and working with it, it's so much more than that. Ended up giving me a lot of great readings, and I think it's a fantastic reader. And for all of those of you out there who love fantasy, fairy tales, those kind of like magical world, this is an amazing deck you can get for very affordable. That for me is just really clever. So it's called Tarot at the End of the Rainbow because in every single card you'll see there's a rainbow somewhere, which is cute, and the inspiration is very fae-like. But because it was called Tarot at the End of the Rainbow, at first I thought it was only going to be like leprechauns and those kind of like Irish creatures, which there's nothing wrong with, but obviously I'm not Irish and I don't live anywhere near Ireland, so I thought this is not going to be for me. But after using this deck and working with it for a while, it's definitely not just leprechauns. We have fairies, we have gnomes, we have all sorts of different forest creatures actually. So for all of those of you who enjoy this world, you're gonna like this. And actually this is giving very much Tolkien vibes. For me, we're in the Tolkien world. There's no hobbits, but there's definitely creatures that could resemble them. And we see like dragons and like our trolls, and there's a lot of scenes that for me are giving the Hobbit vibes, which I love. I love Tolkien. You're gonna see that in the next deck actually, which I'm very excited to show you. So already for that fantasy vibe and it being not just leprechaun or fairies, it was a great surprise. On top of that, it's actually really clever, the deck. It's beautiful illustrations, but really good reinterpretation of the RWS. I think a lot of the images are potent and interesting, with just a good enough twist that you still understand things if you're a beginner. Like for me, this is totally a beginner friendly deck, especially if you resonate with that type of imagery. So this surprised me for the fact that it was more diverse in forest woodland type creatures than I thought, in the fact that it was even more beautiful than I thought. Like, I think this strength card is beautiful, and for the fact that it brought me so much joy, much more than I thought. Like, this is totally giving me Hobbit vibes. If you know, you know. Those trolls listening to the stories by the fire, but wait until the sun comes up and they might turn into stone. There's something about this that feels like you're stepping into this magical forest, that you're taken into this new world. And there's a big escapism here that is not cheesy or childish at all, which I really appreciate. That's another surprise. I thought this was going to be very childish, or childlike maybe I should say, which there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I love childlike decks. That's not a problem. But this was not as childlike as I thought it was going to be. So that's another reason why it surprised me. And it ended up being a really great reader. My favorite thing about this deck, and I say this all the time, every time I show it, are the knights. They are all riding a different creature, and they're all really cute. So here we have the Knight of Cups, the Knight of Pentacles, the Knight of Wands, and the Knight of Swords. I think they're so vibrant, active, they all have very strong personality, and they all represent the suits really well, so love the knights in this deck. Let's move on to another deck that really surprised me. This time it's an indie tarot deck. This is the Prisma Visions Tarot by James R. Eads. And so, to be very transparent, this was sent to me by the artist with a couple of his other decks. I've been working with some of James's decks before and I really enjoyed them, but I didn't have his older decks, considering this is already the 6th edition, so there's already been a few editions. And when I was sent this for review, I thought, you know, I really enjoy all his green leaf collection, but I didn't have any experience with some of those earlier decks that he made, and I didn't know how I was gonna respond to them, particularly, especially this one, even though it's very well loved in the tarot community. At the time when I was seeing it early on in my tarot journey, I wasn't sure it was going to be for me. The James's deck, they've got a lot of intention behind them, and they've got a big personality behind them, but a lot of the suits have been kind of rethought. Even though it's inspired by the RWS, it's not a clone at all. So this is another thing that I was like, okay, how am I going to be faring reading with this? And I really didn't think I was going to end up loving this deck as much as I did. But I've not been able to put this deck down ever since I've received it like 4 or 5 months ago. It's just been a great reader, and mostly for me, this deck has been my go-to deck for any kind of creative questions. If I have questions about my YouTube channels or my creative projects or anything relating to manifesting something, or, you know, very solar plexus things, creativity, channeling my inner magician, this is my go-to deck, honestly, and I think it speaks really well for that. I don't know if it's because the style of the artwork feels very like energetic, and so you almost see the energies floating in the decks here from James's artwork, which I think is beautiful. I love this Judgment card. Maybe it's that, maybe it's the fact that in each suit, if you put all the images of the suit together, so if I put all the swords next to each other, you're gonna see the whole sword story, same for the wands, etc. So there's something here that's very storybook as well, because every suit tells a story. The mages have borders and the minors don't, because like I said, the minors, when you put them together, they tell this like story and different story for each of the suit. I was very pleasantly surprised by this deck because I didn't expect it to love it that much, because I'm not gonna lie, I've gotten decks for review before which I didn't end up loving and which you wouldn't have seen on my channel. So that's something that I'm very particular about. Just because I get a deck for free, if I don't end up loving it, I won't talk about it. I won't force myself and be unauthentic. I appreciate your trust as my viewers, and I appreciate that you pay attention to my opinion. So I would never like present to you a deck that I don't believe in. That's just my limit, really. Or I would tell you, I don't like this, I don't like that, etc. But here, I was so pleasantly surprised by this deck that I've not been able to put it down at all. Didn't think I would enjoy also the fact that I thought they might block me. The fact that some of the majors have the frames, but the minors are borderless. But actually, when you do a reading, it's kind of nice to be able to notice straight away, oh, here are some majors, here are the minors. So that didn't even stop me either, which is something I thought might block me. So overall, the whole experience with this deck was a big surprise. And actually, for those of you who are eyeing up this deck or any of James R. Ead's other decks, such as the Cosmovisions Oracle, for example, which is this one, if you're like eyeing this deck up or it's on your wish list, they very kindly sent me a link. It's not affiliated, I don't get anything out of it, but you get 10% off if you use the coupon. I'm gonna put it on the screen here, and I'm gonna put it in the description box. You can get 10% off on your order. Again, I don't get anything out of it, but I spread the gospel because we love a coupon code. And so if you've been eyeing this deck or anything that they make, they have candles that are really beautiful. They have other like oracle decks, tarot decks and stuff. So go get yourself a discount. Let's move on to l'Oracle Rock, which is a mass market French oracle deck. I am French, obviously, if you couldn't tell by my froggy accent. And so I have a lot of French decks. I'm actually sharing all of them. I have a special series on my channel. It's called, I think it's just called My French Decks, because I was very inspired like that. And I share with you all of my French decks, but I especially categorize them in different like levels so that you can see the ones that would be easy to understand or not. And there's a lot that you would be able to understand even if the only French word you know is oui oui. So make sure to check that out. I'll put it in the card somewhere. As you can see, the guidebook is so chunky. It's huge and it's in full color and it's so good. So this particular deck, l'Oracle Rock, as the name suggests, it's a rock and roll inspired deck. Also, even though it's called l'Oracle Rock and it features a lot of musical icons, they're not all from rock kind of backgrounds. Some of them are from country or even hip hop or jazz. So I would say it's like musically inspired. This is actually a playing card deck. As you can see, we've got the Queen of Clubs, the Queen of Diamonds, we have the Joker as David Bowie. So it's a playing card deck, 54 cards, because there's 2 jokers, and on every single card we have a musical icon. Originally, when I bought this, I saw this at my local bookshop and I just quickly passed through. At the time I was in a rush, so I didn't pick it up. When I got home, I researched it and just to see a couple of the images, and I was like, oh my god, I need to go back and get this. Because first, I love the artwork. It was done by a tattoo artist called La Rata, and I think they're super talented. I really like this particular art style. And second, this is based on one of my other big passions, which is music. I love music. I collect vinyls on top of tarot decks, so I love like this kind of 70s, 80s music. It's my jam. I love that. And a lot of artists here. There are a lot of artists I love, so it was a no-brainer. So literally like 2 days later I went back and I picked this up. So it was a big surprise in the sense that I had never seen that deck before and I hadn't planned on buying this, but it was just meant to be. We have 2 pack here for the 8 of spades, I think you call it in English. God, I always have trouble remembering the suits of playing cards in English. I don't know why, it just won't go into my brain. Second surprise is how good this deck is. First off, for those of you who read playing cards or who love music, you would love this. You don't even need the guidebook. You could even use this to play games if you wanted to, or to read just as regular playing cards. But if you do want to get into the guidebook, oh, and it's red edged, by the way, red metallic, which is quite cool. If you do want to read the guidebook, well, first off, if you don't speak French, you'd have to use Google Translate. So for the 7 of clubs, I think this is Donna Summer, right? Let's see. Looks like Donna Summer. Yeah, Donna Summer. We have hedonism as the keyword, and then here you have lyrics from one of their famous songs, and then you have the messages here that are all about, if you pull this card, what does it mean for you, for your life, like general guidance. The way that this is written, it's very empowering. It's very about being your true self, being fierce, being badass, being unapologetic, which is actually what a lot of those artists were about. A lot of them were about sharing their human experience, sharing their human emotions, sharing their troubles and their joys, but mostly being their true self, shining their own light. We have Boy George here as a 9 of Hearts, which I think is so appropriate. So if you know how to read playing cards, I think you would see how a lot of those artists match with the meaning of the playing cards. If you love music, obviously you would enjoy this deck. And if you're just in the market for a deck that is very empowering, very fierce, that's gonna kick your butt when you need, but also that's gonna give you like the information you need to move forward, very self-empowerment kind of based, then this is an amazing deck. Next up we have Le Tarot des Runes, or I think in English it's called the Runic Tarot. I've got the French version by Lo Scarabeo. I remember if I got this in December or January, but I don't even think I've showed it on my channel. Now I think of it, I might have not even showed it in a haul or something, so some of you might be surprised to know I own this. I guess it's like a little secret. It was a secret purchase I didn't share with you guys. But the reason why I bought this, I'm not gonna lie, I bought the Tarot des Runes or Runic Tarot, not because I care about the runes, because I don't really. I've tried learning the runes, I can't really get like get into it. I've got some books I mean to read, but it's just something that I'm struggling to learn. I've got a deck, I've got a couple of books. It's something I'll get around to at some point, but it's just not something that I feel like the emergency to learn, especially because right now I'm in kind of like the Marseille studies, so the runes will have to wait. So I didn't really get this for the runes. I got this because for me this was a Viking deck, and it's Viking inspired. And at the time I was watching the Vikings, especially Vikings Valhalla on Netflix, which is happening like 100 years later from the original Viking series, which if you watched it, let me know in the comments what you thought. So I was watching that, and then I went into the bookshop and I was looking at stuff and I saw this deck and I was feeling a little low that day, and I just thought this is gonna really help fill the emotional void I feel in my heart. And so I brought it home so I could pull cards while I was watching Vikings. And you know what? It kind of worked. I'm not gonna lie. So don't judge me, okay? Because it served its purpose. It brought me a lot of... And it's a deck I've continually used for myself. I've not used this deck for anyone else. But it's a deck I really enjoy for when I'm in the mood for fantasy, or in the mood for like Vikings. For me, this is not a runic deck, really, at all. I mean, the runes, the few things I understand about them, I don't really understand why they're on the specific tarot cards. The guidebook doesn't tell you necessarily why the runes were chosen, what they were. Especially in the minors, you kind of have to realize what the runes are. It doesn't always tell you. So if you want to learn the runes, don't use this deck at all. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think this is necessarily either a great like Nordic mythology deck, because again, even though there's like a lot of Nordic myths in this particular deck, the guidebook doesn't explain necessarily what those stories are. So unless you've read books about like the Edda and stuff, you wouldn't necessarily understand the stories happening here. For me, this is a fantasy lovers deck with a Viking flair. That's it. This is like a Witcher deck. For me, if you've played or watched The Witcher, this is it. This is giving me Witcher if they were going to Skellige. It's very fantasy. Obviously, we see some Viking inspiration, but it's not a study deck. It's not a serious deck. For me, it's just pure fantasy enjoyment. I don't even pay attention to the runes, but I love what's going on in the cards. I love the artwork. I love the fantasy feel. I love the creatures and the drama of it all, and the battlefronts and all the fierceness and hunger. And look at this Five of Wands. Like, it's cool. It's a cool deck. It's a fierce deck. There's a lot of raw wildness about this deck, and that's what surprised me. Honestly, I bought this because I was feeling sad and because I was watching the Vikings, and this ended up being a really good deck for tapping into that anger that we might have sometimes, that rage, that like fierceness or want, that desire to stay alive. Okay, last one, and this is a pretty special one. I've not shared this on my channel at all, at the time of me filming this anyway. This is gonna be a new one because I've only received it like a couple of days ago, and I bought it sight unseen, which never happens. I always do my research normally when I buy decks, minus the couple of decks I shared it with you today, like the runic and stuff, which is why they're in this video. They're like surprise decks, but normally 99% of the time I do my research, I watch YouTube videos, I look at Instagram pictures and stuff, just to, as I don't want to spend money on the stuff I don't know if I'm gonna like, right? Decks are expensive enough. But this, because it was a theme I love and a lore I love, and because I couldn't find any videos about it on YouTube at the time of me buying, I had to do it for science. So the last deck on my surprise deck is the Lord of the Rings Tarot, which I bought on Etsy. This is what the deck looks like. It comes in a talk box. It doesn't come with a guidebook or anything. I have number 6 out of 500. So you can see I was probably one of the first people to buy this. There might be videos now online and stuff about people sharing this deck. There might not, I don't know. But I will leave in the description box below the Etsy shop where I bought this. I think it comes from the United States. So this deck took a really long time to come to me because I originally ordered this in March, I think. So it took its time because it only arrived now and we're in July. But it was worth the wait in my opinion, although it has a couple of defaults. So I'm gonna tell you everything. First, here are the backs, which are okay. They're okay. They're not my favorite. It says the Lord of the Rings deck. I don't really enjoy writing on my decks, but at least it's quite small, so I don't think it's like outrageous. The edges are... Is that dog hair? Yes, that is. Story of my life. The edges are hollow actually. They're really cool. So nice edges. And as you can see, the deck is this thin and long kind of shape. That's what she said. But the actual cardstock, it's very plasticky. I think this is plastic, to be honest. Can you see the texture of it? So it feels plasticky. It feels very bendy, and it feels like it has this plastic coating on it. So I know some people don't love that, so just so you're aware. So obviously I feel like a lot of you are going to be familiar with The Lord of the Rings. It's a huge fandom. I think a lot of us tarot lovers also love Tolkien's work, because I've noticed that a lot of us who enjoy tarot also love fantasy books and classics and things. So I know there's a lot of us out there who love the Tolkien's world and The Lord of the Rings, and this, as it says on the back, is actually inspired by all 3 eras. So I think we have the Silmarillion, the Hobbit, and the Lord of the Rings. First, let's talk about the things I love about the deck. The artwork. I love the artwork. I think it's gorgeous. The minors are in black and white, although it's more like a sepia. And then the majors are in color. And I love the artwork. I think it's gorgeous. Already we're seeing the thing I don't love about the deck. There are a couple of spelling mistakes on a couple of the cards. Here for the Wheel of Fortune, it says the Wheel of Fortune. So misprint on wheel, but it does tell you the Lord of the Rings Frodo. And then I think the Emperor has a misprint, as well as the High Priestess, I think. We're gonna come to it, I think. We'll have to see. I have not noticed any misprints on the minors. It's just on a couple of the majors. So that's one thing I don't love, because this deck was not cheap. I think I paid like 50 euros for it. And it's my own fault, I guess, because like I said, I bought that sight unseen. Here we go, the Emperor. It's like a P at the end instead of an R. Is it the end of the world? No, I've totally can overlook it, and actually for the last 2 days I've been using this non-stop and I'm obsessed, so it's not stopping me at all from enjoying the deck. It's just that considering the price of the deck, I would have preferred that there was no spelling mistakes. But I bought this deck unseen. I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. It was a nice surprise because I had 0 expectations. I literally bought it because I love Tolkien and I was like, please be good, please be good, please be good. And apart from the spelling mistake, I think that this deck is very cool and I think it's really clever. For Judgment, we have Smoke. from The Hobbit. Isn't that perfect? I think that's perfect. It's like talking about consequences and karma and greed, perfect for judgment. For the moon, we have Saruman. Again, really great association. Saruman, who was a good wizard, turned evil. He let his illusions and fears get in the way, and he was persuaded to move over to the dark side. Really cool interpretation of the moon. The devil is the Witch King. Perfect. The High Priestess, oh, there you go. Do you see? We have a R here for the spelling mistake. But you know what? I can get over it. It's fine. We have Arwen. Arwen, for me, I always thought that she was giving High Priestess energy. When I was watching the movies, I already had made that association, so it makes sense to me. Honestly, all the majors, I really enjoy the associations. The minors, you don't have the names of who it is, the characters and stuff. But for a lot of them, I think you would be able to recognize. It's only some of the court cards, especially for the elves, that sometimes I'm like, who is that again? But then I go to the majors and I checked like their necklaces and their clothes, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I know who that is. So for the King of Wands here, we see Aragorn because we see his crown. So that's how I know. And his armor and stuff. And Aragorn as a King of Wands, it makes sense to me. See the Queen of Wands here as this particular elf. I'm not sure who that is. Let me know in the comments if you know. The Page of Wands, we see a hobbit with food, so I think that's probably Pippin. For the Six of Cups, we see again the two hobbits. This time I think they're about to play with fireworks, and Six of Cups for me, it's all about that nostalgia, that childhood, that almost mischief. So the fireworks and the hobbits, that makes a lot of sense for me with that sense. The Hangman, we see Boromir, beautiful depiction of the Hangman. Honestly, this is one of the cards that when I was looking at the cards when I first received the deck, I was like, I'm so glad I took the jump and I bought this unseen because this is beautiful. For the lovers, we have Eowyn, which is cool. The Fool is Gollum, really interesting again. The Queen of Swords is Eowyn again, I think, but this time it's when she's on the battlefield, which super cool depiction of the Queen of Swords. The Seven of Cups is, I forgot his name, but the horrible advisor who let his king be mind-trapped by Saruman. I forgot his name, but really gross, despicable human being. And he is a good Seven of Cups representation because he was literally selling illusions and lying and giving this like fake world to his master. So cool interpretation. The Eight of Cups, Bilbo, who is leaving his hut going on an adventure. Super cool representation of the Eight of Cups. So my friends, this is it. These were all the decks that surprised me, and I finished on a bang, I think, because I hope you'll enjoy seeing this cool new deck with me, especially because it's something I've not seen a lot of people share, so hopefully you enjoyed that. I want to say a huge thanks to my darling over at Semplicimente SE. Please go and check out her video in the description box if you want to do a VR to her tag that she created. And I want to say a huge thank you to you as well for watching, for being here, for commenting. I'm so grateful that you're part of this community we have together. And until my next video, I want to send you so much good vibes and keep navigating the waves of your soul. Bye!